The phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, its screen glowing in the dim morning light. I was halfway through stirring cream into my coffee, the spoon clinking softly against the mug, when I saw the message. It was from my mother-in-law, Ellen, her name flashing like a warning. Family dinner tonight at our place. 6 p.m. Immediate family only. My breath caught, a sharp sting in my chest. Immediate family. The words burned, cold and deliberate. I wasn't invited. Again. I stood there, the hum of the fridge filling the silence, my fingers tightening around the mug. It wasn't just a dinner. It was the third event in 2 months, first a weekend lake trip, then a cousin's engagement party, now this. Each time, the same excuse, we're keeping it small, or, it's just family. But I saw the photos on social media, the sprawling tables, the laughter, my husband David's siblings and their spouses clinking glasses. Everyone but me. Ellen's voice echoed in my mind, from a Thanksgiving years ago, her smile sharp as she'd said, "You're not really one of us, are you, Claire?" She'd laughed, like it was a joke. It wasn't. I set the mug down, the coffee untouched, and leaned against the counter. My reflection stared back from the stainless steel kettle, tired eyes, a face that had tried too hard to belong. For 7 years, I'd bent over backward for David's family. I'd hosted brunches, driven hours to their events, bitten my tongue when Ellen called me the outsider, in front of everyone. I'd thought love meant endurance. But that morning, something cracked. I wasn't just hurt. I was done. Life before this moment had a rhythm, a warmth I'd woven with care, like a quilt stitched over years. Our home was a modest colonial in a Connecticut suburb, where maple trees blazed red in fall and kids left scooters on driveways. Mornings were my haven. I'd wake at 6:30, the alarm's gentle chime nudging me from sleep, and slip downstairs in my worn slippers. The coffee maker hissed as it brewed, filling the kitchen with a nutty aroma. I'd sit at the counter, scrolling through emails, the bay window framing a sky streaked with dawn. David would shuffle in, his hair a mess, planting a kiss on my forehead before filling his thermos. "You're my rock, Claire," he'd say, his voice soft, and I'd glow, believing I was enough. My job as a project manager at a mid-sized marketing firm was my pride. The office, a 40-minute drive through quiet highways, buzzed with energy, open desks, ringing phones, the clatter of keyboards. I thrived in the chaos, juggling deadlines, soothing clients, and pitching campaigns that won us contracts. I'd earned my place through late nights, certifications, and a knack for keeping teams on track. My boss, Maria, called me the glue, her praise a quiet validation. Once, I led a campaign for a local brewery, staying up until 2 a.m. to perfect the visuals. When the client signed, my team threw me a mini party, complete with cupcakes. It wasn't just a job, it was proof I could build something solid. Weekends belonged to David's family, a duty I embraced with hope. His parents, Ellen and Richard, lived an hour away in a sprawling house with rose bushes and a lawn that looked staged. Family was David's anchor, and I wanted to belong. I'd arrive at their barbecues with lemon bars I'd baked at midnight, their crusts golden and tart. I memorized his cousins' kids' names, Lila, Ethan, Sophie, and asked about their soccer games. I laughed at Richard's corny puns, even when they fell flat. Once, I organized a surprise 60th birthday for Richard, renting a tent and hiring a jazz band. The family cheered, but Ellen's smile was tight, her "well done, Claire" clipped. I thought I could win her over. David promised she'd soften. She never did. Ellen was the gatekeeper, her presence like a chill in a warm room. She'd watch me, her eyes narrowing when I spoke, her compliments barbed. "Claire, you're so independent," she'd say, the word dripping with judgment. I'd swallow the sting, thinking endurance was love. I skipped girls' nights to drive to their events, dipped into savings for their lavish gifts, crystal vases, monogrammed cufflinks. I even hosted a Christmas brunch once, spending days on the menu, only for Ellen to rearrange the table settings and claim credit. I thought I was building a place in their world. I didn't see how fragile it was. The cracks came slowly, subtle as shadows lengthening at dusk. It began a year ago, at David's sister's baby shower. I'd poured weeks into it, booking a sunlit venue, designing floral invites, even crafting a diaper cake with tiny bows. Ellen swept in, delivering the toast, thanking the family, while her gaze skipped me. "A true team effort," she said, as I stood holding cupcakes, my smile frozen. The room clapped, and I felt invisible, a guest at my own event. David squeezed my hand later, murmuring, "She didn't mean it," but Ellen's smirk lingered in my mind, sharp as a blade. The family group chat was another wound. It buzzed with plans and jokes, a thread I was part of but never truly in. My suggestions, a restaurant for a birthday, a hike for a reunion, went ignored. Ellen would reply, "We've already decided," her tone final. I once saw a screenshot of a separate chat, accidentally posted, with Ellen's words, "Easier without Claire." My stomach churned, but I brushed it off, telling myself it was a misunderstanding. Then there was the anniversary David forgot, our 6th, when he claimed a last-minute family thing kept him at Ellen's. He came home at midnight, smelling faintly of wine, with no apology. I lay awake, the silence heavy, wondering when I'd become an afterthought. David's behavior shifted, too, like a tide pulling away. He'd return from family visits distracted, his answers vague. "Just catching up," he'd say, avoiding my eyes. I found a receipt in his jacket once, for a winery I'd never visited, the date matching a work trip. When I asked, he mumbled, "Client thing," and changed the subject. I wanted to trust him, but doubt settled in, cold and unyielding. Another time, I overheard him on the phone with Ellen, his voice low, "I'll handle Claire." "Handle me?" The word stung, but I stayed silent, my heart racing with questions I wasn't ready to ask. The lake trip broke me. David said it was just parents and siblings, a small getaway. I packed his bag, kissed him goodbye, ignoring the knot in my chest. Then I saw the photos online, his brother's wife, laughing by the dock, her hair glinting in the sun. Not just siblings. The table was crowded with cousins, spouses, kids. I called David, my voice trembling. Why wasn't I invited? He sighed, exasperated. Mom said it was too crowded. I hung up, tears burning, and stared at Ellen's face in the photo, her smile triumphant. This wasn't a mistake. It was a message. That night, alone on the couch, the house too still, I unraveled. The TV flickered, its light casting shadows, but I couldn't focus. My mind spun, anger, shame, grief. I'd given them everything, my time, my heart, my pride, and they'd shut me out. Ellen's voice echoed, "Not really one of us." I wanted to scream, to drive to their house and demand answers. I imagined confronting David, his face crumpling as I laid out every hurt. But that's what they wanted, an outburst they could twist, proof I was unstable. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. I opened my laptop, hands shaking, and began to piece it together. I pulled up the group chat, scrolling through ignored messages, saving screenshots. I found the winery receipt, the anniversary he'd forgotten, every slight I'd buried. I created a folder, labeled Truth, and documented it all, the baby shower, the secret chat, the lake trip. It wasn't just pain, it was a pattern, deliberate and cruel. Ellen was the architect, but David was complicit. The truth hit like a blow, my marriage, my place in their world, was built on sand. I sat there, tears streaming, grappling with the betrayal. Could I leave him? Could I face Ellen? The fear of losing everything, my home, my stability, clawed at me. But so did the anger, sharp and clarifying. I wasn't powerless. My career had taught me strategy, how to anticipate and outmaneuver. If they thought I'd stay the outsider, they'd underestimated me. I wiped my face, my jaw set. I could beg for their acceptance, or I could reclaim my life. I chose the latter, a resolve forming like steel in my bones. I wouldn't just survive this. I'd win. The next morning, I called Rachel, a college friend turned family lawyer with a reputation for dismantling opponents. We met at a crowded cafe, the clink of spoons and chatter shielding our words. I poured out everything, the exclusions, David's lies, Ellen's control. Rachel's pen tapped her notebook, her eyes narrowing. "You've got a case," she said. "But you need hard evidence. And a clear strategy." I nodded, already mapping it out. I became a detective in my own life. I tracked David's expenses, cross-referencing receipts with his family visits. I found charges for dinners at upscale restaurants, a boutique hotel, places he'd never mentioned. Logging into our joint account, something I hadn't done in years, I discovered transfers to an unfamiliar account, thousands of dollars siphoned over months. My pulse raced, but I stayed methodical, screenshotting every transaction. Accessing David's email was trickier. I waited until he was asleep, using his tablet, my fingers trembling as I searched. I found cryptic messages from Ellen, one instructing him to keep Claire out of the loop. I dug deeper, uncovering an email about a trust, Ellen's words chilling, "She's not family." They were cutting me out of a financial plan, erasing my stake in our shared life. I watched Ellen, too, noting her routines, brunches with David's siblings, calls he'd take behind closed doors. Once, I drove by their house, seeing unfamiliar cars in the driveway, a meeting I hadn't been told about. It wasn't paranoia, it was clarity. Every step confirmed their intent. Rachel and I met weekly, refining the plan. "We can freeze assets and build a fraud case," she said, her voice steady. "But how far do you want to push?" I met her gaze. "As far as it takes." For the first time, I felt grounded, my fear giving way to purpose. My plan unfolded quietly, each move deliberate, like setting a chessboard before the game begins. Rachel froze our joint accounts, citing financial irregularities. David didn't notice, he was too caught up with his family. I hired Tara, a private investigator who moved like a shadow, her reports precise. She trailed Ellen and David, documenting their meetings at cafes and law offices. She uncovered the trust, a legal document funneling family assets to David and his siblings, excluding me entirely. Ellen had framed it as protecting the family, and David had signed without question. I played the dutiful wife, smiling when David came home, asking about his day. It was torture, masking my anger, but it bought me time. Tara's findings grew darker. She discovered Ellen was siphoning money from the family business, a real estate firm Richard had built. Ellen hid profits in an offshore account, using David as a front. He was oblivious to the full scheme, a pawn in her game. Tara caught her meeting a shady accountant, their conversation hushed but damning. I had enough to ruin Ellen, her wealth, her status, her control. The power shifted, and I felt it, a quiet thrill beneath the pain. I kept Rachel updated, our meetings like war councils. We planned not just a divorce but a reckoning, using the trust and Ellen's fraud as leverage. Every document, every photo, was a weapon. I wasn't just protecting myself, I was dismantling their lies. The weight of it steadied me, my resolve hardening with each step. The confrontation came at Ellen's 4th of July barbecue, the air thick with charcoal and the hum of cicadas. I'd been invited via a curt text from David, "Mom says you can come." The condescension almost made me laugh. I wore a simple white dress, my expression calm, but inside, I was a storm, ready to break. I waited until dessert, when Ellen stood to toast family unity, her voice dripping with pride. Her eyes flicked to me, smug. I rose, glass in hand. To family, I said, my voice cutting through the chatter. And to truth. Silence fell, heavy and sharp. I pulled out my phone, projecting Tara's photos onto the patio wall, Ellen's secret meetings, the trust documents, the offshore account. Gasps rippled through the crowd. David's face drained of color. Ellen stammered, "This is a misunderstanding." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "You called me an outsider," I said, locking eyes with her. "But you're the one betraying your family." I turned to David. "And you let her." I walked away, the murmurs of shock trailing behind me, my steps steady. The aftermath was a whirlwind. Rachel filed the divorce papers the next day, citing fraud and emotional abuse. The evidence was ironclad, David didn't contest it. He lost his share of the trust, his signature on Ellen's documents tying him to her schemes. Ellen faced a brutal audit, her offshore account exposed. The family business crumbled, its assets seized as creditors swarmed. David's siblings turned on her, their anger fueled by betrayal and financial ruin. Ellen's social circle vanished, her name whispered in scorn at country clubs and charity galas. Their world collapsed, brick by brick. I didn't escape unscathed. The divorce drained me, legal fees piled up, and I sold our house to cover costs. Friends I'd trusted took David's side, their calls fading to silence. The loneliness stung, but I leaned into my work. My team rallied, their support a lifeline. I landed a promotion, my boss praising my unshakable focus during a campaign that won us a major client. I moved to a bright loft in the city, its windows catching the morning light. Mornings became mine again, coffee brewing, the city humming below. The emotional toll lingered. I'd wake at 3 a.m., replaying the barbecue, questioning if I'd been too harsh. But then I'd remember Ellen's smirk, David's lies, and the strength it took to stand up. I started painting again, a hobby from college, the brushstrokes grounding me. I joined a book club, laughing with strangers who became friends. I traveled to Maine alone, standing on a rocky shore as waves crashed, the salt air cleansing. Looking back, I regret nothing, not the pain, not the fight, not the moment I reclaimed my life. Ellen thought she could erase me, that I'd stay silent, the outsider, forever. David thought I'd forgive his betrayal. They saw weakness where I found strength, compliance where I was strategizing. I didn't just survive their lies, I transcended them. Now, I wake each day knowing who I am. Not their pawn, not their scapegoat, just Claire, whole and free. I've built a life they can't touch, one of quiet mornings, new passions, and people who see me for me. I took a weekend trip to Vermont last month, hiking trails ablaze with autumn, my breath steady as I climbed. I'm enough, and I always was. If someone tries to push you out, to make you feel small, what would you do? Would you bend, or would you rise, building something unbreakable? I made my choice. And I'd make it again.